I came home from deployment to find my grandfather's cedar cabin reduced to splinters and dust, diesel exhaust still hanging in the cold mountain air, the sweet cut of crushed wood mixing with 4 generations of Christmases, summer fish fries, and Sunday coffee on the porch, gone. And at the end of the gravel drive stood HOA President Vivian Blackthorne with a demolition invoice for $12,000 and a smile that belonged in a training slide about entitlement, telling me I owed back fees for violations that never legally existed. She had no idea my family does Sunday dinner like a federal task force. Dad an FBI white-collar crime, Mom IRS criminal investigation, my sister Mackenzie at ATF, and me, 25 years Army intel, logistics scars and all, standing where our kitchen used to be, boots in the dust of our history. I looked at the woman who just turned a nuisance into a federal case and thought, you bulldozed the wrong cabin. What would you do if someone destroyed your family legacy out of spite? Drop your location. Tell me where you're watching from. Let me back up 18 months to when I thought retirement meant coffee steam over a glassy lake and loons, stitching distance with their voices. I'm Marcus Sterling, 52, ex-Army logistics who got smart and retired to the mountains when Uncle Theodore left me a not-much-to-look-at A-frame on a tear-shaped lake. 2 bedrooms, 1 stubborn bathroom, a 1970s kitchen that dared you to complain, and a view that could fix your soul. 12 modest homes circled 47 acres of still water, just regular folks. At least that's what I believed until a white BMW, white teeth, white lies pulled in 3 doors down. Karen turned Vivian Whitmore, turned Blackthorne. She cycles. Names like a shell game. 48 real estate mouthpiece married to a city council climber named Derek, was HOA president inside 2 weeks because no one else wanted the job. She introduced herself while I tuned the Chris Craft I rebuilt bolt by bolt. Mahogany soft as butter, chrome shining like noon. Oh, you're the military man, we have standards, she said, condescension dressing as civility. And I remember catching that perfume, expensive, invasive, lingering after she left like a spray of artificial flowers in a pine forest. My first violation came on crisp letterhead. Oversized recreational vessel violates Covenant 14.7b at $200 a day. Logistics teaches you not to flinch, gather intel. So I got curious. Who's this president? What's in Uncle Theodore's paper trail? What history did she forget to check? Because the person with the best documentation usually wins. While I was mapping supply chains and enemy comms in Europe, Vivian scheduled a 2 p.m. Wednesday emergency meeting in her living room, declared a special assessment and wrote a 47-page violation dossier on our family cabin, including unregistered combustible hazard for my grandfather's fire pit and unapproved native plants where columbine had bloomed since before she learned the word aesthetic. Paperwork stacked like sandbags against a family she assumed couldn't read a statute. When I rotated home, the cabin smelled musty, neglect creeping under doorframes, and the stack of threats on the table was thick enough to stop shrapnel. That's when training took over. Map the network, identify motives, trace communications, find weak points. I cleared the table, built a threat board with string and notes the way I used to pull Taliban cells from chaos, and started reading. Captain Rodriguez at Military Legal Aid nearly spilled coffee. Service Members Civil Relief Act, Sergeant. No enforcement while you're deployed without federal notice. This whole thing's illegal on its face. Then the property manager admitted Vivian had threatened their license if they didn't abandon our contract. Siege tactics with permits. In the Secretary of State's database lay the gold bar. The HOA's corporate registration expired 8 months earlier. Vivian was running a ghost organization. The BMW kept doing 2 a.m. passes, amateur surveillance, while I walked the line. With a tape, trail cams, and a camera, neighbors began whispering the same story. Can't buy supplies. Surprise inspections. Identical fines. You could smell the storm coming, the kind you don't hide from. Vivian's escalation arrived with a county safety inspection scheduled for Tuesday at 10 a.m., right when working families can't attend. The inspector, Dale Henricks, mid-50s with lifted truck swagger and a buddy tone that says the opposite, spent 4 minutes on our perfectly certified 12x8 dock before pronouncing it an imminent hazard. 3 days earlier, my trail cams caught him and Vivian doing a midnight pre-inspection, measuring, photographing, conferring like they were preparing a crime scene, his cheap cologne mixing with lake water. Mackenzie ran Dale through ATF databases and found a horror footnote. His sign-off on a 2019 bridge that collapsed and killed 2 people. His license should have been gone. Somehow he was still stamping unsafe for profit. That afternoon, I convened Sunday dinner as Federal Task Force, Dad laying out RICO elements on our dining table, official processes for personal gain, multiple actors, pattern, Mom tapping into assessor records. She's been claiming adjacent properties as condemned to reduce her tax burden, profiting off manufactured blight. Mackenzie printing statutory authority, emergency inspections under state. Law require actual imminent danger, not HOA-invented urgency. I'd already discovered the HOA had no corporate standing. The next morning, Vivian arrived with a chainsaw crew to secure the hazard. I stepped onto the supposedly dangerous dock and said, polite as a ranger at the trailhead, "You're trespassing. If you believe you have authority, call the sheriff. I'll wait." Chainsaws idled to silence. The look on her face when the bluff met a statute would have been funny if it wasn't standing on our history. 2 days later, the compromise letter came wrapped in a threat. Emergency demolition order for the Friday after Thanksgiving. Emotional maximum, witnesses minimum. Signed by a county judge who'd swallowed Dale's fraudulent report. Thanksgiving at the cabin smelled like sage stuffing, cedar smoke, and stubborn love. 4 generations telling the same football lies when Deputy Martinez, Iraq vet, arrived hat in hand to deliver a 48-hour evacuation he didn't believe in. "Sergeant, this stinks. Lawyer up," he said. Emergency demolitions require documented peril and judicial review, not a one-page fairy tale. We turned the dining room into a war room. Dad called public corruption. Mom filed IRS fraud flags on Vivian's construction company and consulting fees. Mackenzie looped ATF across counties on Dale's illegal work. I wrote a timeline that would make a battalion S2 nod. Who, what, where, when, why, and how many statutes each step violated. Then Mom found the diamond in county records. Serenity Development LLC, Vivian managing partner. 12 acres next to us purchased in 2019. $2.3 million glamping resort contingent on removing non-conforming structures on adjacent parcels. Our cabin wasn't clutter. It was a cork in a bottle worth millions to her. 5 other lake families had identical harassment arcs. Same inspector, same special assessments, same supply cutoffs. Dad laid yarn from property to bank to shell, company to county office. The picture looked like racketeering 101. Vivian invited local radio to brag about successful resolution of community safety concerns, and in the process put her roadmap on tape while federal agents built their case. Monday morning, our injunction filed. The ghost HOA's status. Attached. SCRA violations headlining, and Blackthorn had just pulled the pin on a federal grenade she couldn't see. By week 1, our Sunday dinner had badges. Dad's FBI team opened a public corruption file. Mom's IRSCI pulled tax returns, shell ledgers, and bank flows. Mackenzie stitched ATF and sheriffs in 3 counties, and I fed them a pattern analysis that linked every bribe-disguised consulting fee, every emergency inspection, every supply chain choke to the resort plan. Vivian paid $340,000 in consultation to county contacts over 3 years. Dale had standing monthly retainers labeled structural assessment, pay to condemn. Her brother-in-law at First Mountain Bank pre-approved the $2.3 million construction loan. HOA harassment was the retail face of a wholesale theft enterprise. We built a community intel network. The retired Marine editor became media conduit. The Navy surveyor provided technicals. 5 targeted families turned cooperating witnesses. The hardware store owner, Vietnam vet, handed over a 3-year log of can't sell to this address orders. Within 2 weeks, the walls were whiteboards and timelines. We had surveillance authority, asset freeze pathways, and multi-agency comms that would make a joint task force jealous. Vivian felt it and did what panicked criminals do. Escalated. Crews posing as utility cut electrical lines, punctured, The septic sabotaged the pump. My trail cams filmed everything. Gloved hands, bolt cutters, plates on trucks, and Vivian in the BMW conducting like a cruel conductor. She sent anonymous letters to our agencies accusing us, federal employees, of instability to trigger clearance reviews. Instead, she tripped counter-intel protocols. Threatening federal personnel turns misdemeanors into maximums. Then, she tried to shape the narrative, planted editorials about federal overreach, hired a PR firm to paint herself a victim, and used the same surveilled phones and emails to coordinate it all. The moment she crossed from pressure to bribery, the coffee shop envelope slid to a federal agent with, "Make this go away." The case clicked from inevitable to imminent. "Ma'am, you're under arrest for attempting to bribe a federal officer," Agent Rodriguez said, and the cuffs clicked in front of half the town's morning crowd. ATF scooped Dale in a Wyoming Walmart lot trying to outrun the interstate. News choppers hovered over our dangerous dock while we watched handcuffs and careers. Vivian tried to set fire to her construction office, accelerant smashed drives, while Mom smiled. We subpoenaed the cloud last week. She mailed threats to witnesses, felony witness tampering in her handwriting, staged a break-in at her own house with camping gear labeled military equipment and smoke detectors missing their stickers. Deputy Martinez called FBI with one look. "Worst staged scene I've seen." Co-conspirators flipped like coins. The county commissioner traded a plea for a confession. The bank president remembered loan coordination with HOA harassment. Sledgehammer crews admitted they were paid to fail systems. Vivian moved money offshore in real time while Treasury watched in widescreen. Then came the Hail Mary, attempted judicial bribery via a former classmate. The prosecutor hung up after 43 seconds and called the U.S. attorney. New charges stacked: obstruction, bribery, witness tampering. We'd started with a dock and a demolition. We now had a full RICO tree bearing fruit. The Lake Serenity safety meeting was supposed to be Vivian's victory lap. Media invited, special recognition on the agenda, but the audience included plainclothes FBI, ATF with cameras in the back row, IRSCI at exits, and the U.S. Attorney's Office in the wings. The Garrison family walked in together, me in dress uniform leading, and the room rose on instinct. Vivian took the mic and rehearsed outside agitators and honest volunteers and protecting families. But murmurs swelled as people who'd suffered recognized the script. I requested the floor as a concerned resident and connected my laptop. The screen filled with trail cam footage. Crews cutting power, puncturing tanks, tossing gravel into our pump intake while Vivian's BMW idled. "What you're seeing," I said, "is documented evidence of criminal conspiracy during an active federal investigation." The room erupted. Dad stood, Special Agent Franklin Garrison, and announced multiple indictments for civil rights violations under color of law, racketeering, mail wire fraud, and money laundering. Then ATF walked Dale in cuffs. Gasps rolled like a wave. "She paid me to fake safety reports on properties she wanted," he choked, and the last air left. Vivian's narrative. Mom presented the money trail with surgical calm. $340K unreported income. Bribes laundered as consultation. Personal accounts receiving HOA fees while the association was dissolved. 5 targeted families testified. Identical timelines. Identical threats. The hardware owner added his 3-year ledger of no-sell intimidation orders. Vivian tried a last shriek. Federal vendetta. But Miranda rights have a gravity microphones can't float. "Ma'am, you have the right to remain silent," Agent Rodriguez said as cuffs closed. Cameras caught the fall. As they led her past a room of neighbors who finally saw the scam they'd lived through. I gave her the line deployment had been writing in my head. "You bulldozed our family cabin thinking we were powerless. You forgot our oath runs to this Constitution against all enemies, foreign and domestic. Today, justice comes home." 6 months later, a gavel dropped. 4 years in federal prison for Vivian, $2.3 million in restitution, permanent ban from HOA rolls. Dale took 18 months and lost every license a board could revoke. The commissioner pled to bribery and resigned. The bank president negotiated his exit under a cloud of cooperation. The civil suit delivered full compensation for the demolition, plus punitive damages that spoke a language HOA tyrants understand. More important than prison was healing, teaching a community that governance isn't a weapon you point at people who garden differently. We built a new cabin on the same footprint, anchored to the same bedrock with a wraparound porch that holds 3 generations for Sunday dinner. The smell of fresh cedar and chocolate chip cookies replaces diesel and fear. Kids cannonball. From the dock we secured by proving fraud. Loons stitch the sky back to the lake and the water reflects nothing but blue and possibility. Lake Serenity dissolved the old HOA and drafted a transparent, term-limited open-book neighborhood association. The legislature passed the Service Members HOA Protection Act, baking CCRA-style protections into state law and criminalizing weaponized emergency actions. Federal agencies stood up an HOA abuse task force and reform campaigns lit up in 23 states. Our Veteran Scholarship Fund sends kids from military families to college with lessons written in filings, not slogans. The doc, when David has a federal badge, made our story a blueprint. Verify corporate status at the Secretary of State. Expired orgs can't fine you. Document everything with timestamps. Conspiracy requires coordination. File with the right agencies. FBI for public corruption, civil rights under color of law. IRSCI for fraud. ATF when safety tools become weapons. DOJ for RICO. And organize your neighbors. There is always a Frank, a Sarah, a Deputy Martinez in every zip code. The best payoff wasn't verdicts or checks. It was the sound of ordinary people relaxing on porches they earned, free from clipboards, calling themselves kings. Now tell me yours. Drop your HOA nightmare in the comments. We read every one and root the worst to people with badges and statutes. Subscribe if watching a community beat fear with facts scratches the itch you've felt since the first friendly notice arrived. Next week, I'll tell you how my sister Mackenzie didn't blink when a corrupt sheriff threatened an ATF explosives investigator. Spoiler, federal bears don't bluff. Until then, remember, justice tastes like victory, sounds like neighbors. Laughing by legal fire pits and feels like coming home to a place bullies can't survive once the lights come on.